All right, so I know it's still kind of early, but I'm going to ask you guys to all smile, because how often do you get the opportunity to take a Snapchat of 500 of your closest friends? So, one of the things that I think is really interesting about this generation is the way that technology makes us different from previous ones. You know, stuff like the sharing economy just means there's a whole host of different priorities. And for anybody in the audience who's not quite sure where those generational lines fall, we have a basic snapshot here. If you were born in the 1960s to 80s, roughly, you're Gen X. In the 80s and 90s, that's Generation Y, also known as the Millennial generation. So I'd like to start us off with a little lightning round to kind of find out how well our panelists fit that millennial mold. So we'll just go down the line. Do any of you own a car?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No. Do you just Uber everywhere?
Yes.
Okay.
Or walk.
And how about a home? Any homeowners?
No.
No?
No.
Yes.
Got one?
Yep.
Okay, I'm noticing a trend here. How about cable?
No.
No.
Ben?
Yes.
I think you'll be at the far end of our millennial spectrum. And what about married? Is anybody married?
I just got married.
Oh, congratulations. How about you two?
No.
Yes.
Yes. Man, Ben is our card-carrying millennial here. Okay. And does anybody have kids?
No.
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 Okay, we found one we all agree on. You know, the reason I ask those questions is because it seems like marriage and children are more of a delayed priority for people our age. They're doing other stuff like building amazing companies, which leads me to my first question. You guys are all business leaders, and I'm wondering if you feel like millennials are more entrepreneurial by nature, and if so, is that a choice or is it by force? Ben, why don't you start us off?
Yeah. I think that millennials grew up in an era where the internet existed, and so we have this this general notion that all information should be available to us all the time. And so I think a lot of the things that millennials get criticized for are that they hop jobs, or that they're not satisfied, or that they want to go and do something faster, and they should wait their turn and climb the corporate ladder. And I think we're seeing a lot of impatience because we're seeing a lot less information be siloed within companies and a lot more opportunities available in the world. So I think our generation definitely benefits from a desire to go and do different things and kind of whatever they want to do, because one, it's cheaper to try starting a company than it's ever been before, and two, we feel like we have the information and the right to do so.
Richard, do you want to follow that up?
Yeah, I think, I'm coming from a different cultural background. My I come here from China when I was 13, first generation immigrant, and also first generation of college in my family. And I think from my perspective, I would say yes. And the thing is that my grandparents who went through the Chinese Cultural Revolution, they had to survive just for food. And I think for my parents, they were getting their feet in the ground and try to establish a family and just get a continuity and sustainability for their lives. And so when it comes down to my generation, I no longer have to survive for food. I no longer have to think about the jobs. I have a lot of different options. I think for people in our age, we have a lot of different technology tools. I think so therefore, it really enables them to make more choices. And a lot of it then may show up as entrepreneurship. Yeah.
Those choices can sometimes lead to anxiety though, right? Like I feel like people our age sometimes struggle with never quite feeling satisfied because there might be a million more options out there, whether it's in the job market or on Tinder.
Yeah, sure.
Do you feel like that's been a little bit of a struggle?
Yeah, I think for this generation, I would say yes, including myself. There's just a lot of more technology options and different options in life that you really have to be focused and to really overcome the anxiety. And I totally agree with that point. Yeah.
So this generation gets criticized a lot as I don't know if you remember this Time magazine cover that came out a couple of years ago that spoke to a lot of the stereotypes about our generation, that they're narcissists, they're entitled. And Leen, you came to this country from Jordan to get your PhD. You started M3 at a very young age to fight, incurable diseases that are costing societies billions of dollars. That hardly fits that stereotype of a millennial who wants a trophy for just showing up. Like, I think it's safe to say you earned that trophy. Yeah. So are you an exception to this stereotype, or do people just have the wrong idea?
Well, I think The millennials is like any other generation. There's a spectrum of different personalities. So we are definitely, I want to echo his comment that the previous generation, they had to work and they were more nervous about being, just providing for their families and survive, versus us, we had a more comfortable bring up. And I didn't grow up here in the US, and when I say comfortable, it's on a different spectrum, which is not comfortable here in the US. But I think that we have the opportunity, the accessibility to information, the luxury to learn anything that we want. We're not limited. I started as a pharmacist, then did a PhD in pharmacology, but also because I had the opportunity to change my mind when I didn't like being a pharmacist, and when I started my career as a scientist, I also didn't like it, then moved to business. I think that this openness that I was able to go online and read and meet people through, blogs and conferences made it easier for me to make the switch and expand my options. So it might come to the same that we are entitled to basically make the change, but also that we're empowered as a generation with the technology that backs us up.
Ben, are there any stereotypes that you think people have that are just totally inaccurate?
I'd echo the spectrum comment. I'd say, on average, probably more entitled than baby boomers. I don't think that comes from nowhere. I think that there's definitely some signal to that in our generation. But I think that entitlement comes from growing up in just a very different climate, both economically and technologically, than generations before us.
Can it ever be a good thing? Like, can it ever work to our advantage?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the pace of innovation is faster than it's ever been, which is kind of that statement is always true since we've always been accelerating. But that double-sided coin of never satisfied, but then the toll that takes on us of never being content. I think it's good in the sense that it pushes the envelope forward, and it means we can accomplish more than we ever have before. But it also comes with that. We have way too much going on in our lives, and we're always looking at the next thing and never happy with the current thing. So it's definitely a balance.
Yeah, and if I could comment on this one, I think that it also makes us less, or fearless, reckless, I would say, and which would make us make mistakes faster and learn faster and potentially get to success faster. So I think that definitely entitlement, I wouldn't say just entitlement, but being less worried about things, fearless, and just moving forward. And it's a generation that's running. Everyone is doing a sprint marathon, I think, in our generation.
It's funny that you say fearless, because you might also almost expect it to go on the other end of the spectrum. We're a generation that came of age during one of the biggest economic disasters that the world has ever seen. And my expectation would be that maybe we'd be a little more conservative because there's no guarantees. But you all are business leaders, entrepreneurs. Like, were you ever afraid of the risks when you jumped into that head first?
Well, I think we're a non-representative sample, for sure. You're not seeing the comments echoed of people that are in the greatest amount of student debt ever and are paralyzed by that debt. We have tons of friends that's their life, and they're going to be at that company for the next 5 years because looking around is scary. You don't know if that next job will work out, and gotta go pay down $100,000+ of debt. I don't think that's uncommon. We have the most student debt ever, and so I think we're either in a position where we didn't have student debt, or we were taking riskier ways to climb out of that. And I think that we keep going back to the spectrum thing, but another major kind of plight of the millennial generation is figuring out how to both operate in this world where our knowledge is more transferable than ever before and we can jump around more easily, and we need the financial stability to pay down our education. Richard, did you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I think all generalizations are false. We try to put things into black and white, but you're only somewhere in the gray. And I think the the stereotype of entitlement and all that stuff, to certain pockets is true. But I think that is a human condition. It exists in all generations, not just the millennial, the X, or the Y. It's a human condition that we deal with. If you look at Coding Dojo, we have more than 50 employees, and our average age is 25 to 27. So my whole company is powered by these brilliant, hardworking millennials. And without them, I wouldn't be here today. And my customers, 100% of them are millennials. And I see them working really hard. And so my sentiment here is just that we need to be careful about generalization about a whole generation of people, millennials, from 25 to 35, or 22 to 35 in that range. But you'll find a lot of hardworking, my friends who are immigrants, or just a lot of hardworking people there. So in that sentiment, I think that it's just very different. Depends on the pockets you're looking at, kind of what you're talking about, right? Yeah.
So just to make sure I understand, most of the people that work for Coding Dojo are 25, and then everyone who attends the school pretty much is in their 20s.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And how does that make your business different? It's so interesting.
I think it's a very fast culture. We innovate every single 2-3 weeks. We have our sprint cycles in the way how we develop our courses, our content. Of course, we have older, more experienced folks help us guide a younger team in the way how we do that. But it helps our culture it's just a lot of energy, just a lot of commitment, and also people are working really hard and try to get things done. Yeah.
Do you feel like, and maybe Ben, you can answer this one too, do you feel like tech companies are more likely to hire millennials than companies in other industries? I know, Leen, you're not quite in the same sphere, but you're in the biotech versus high tech. So what do you think?
Well, I think looking at job markets in general, people with tech backgrounds coming out of college, either with business or technical or scientific degrees, are much more likely to get hired, purely because the job market's better, because there's more money in those fields. I think that tech companies often benefit from the eagerness of really young people. I think that
You mean they're not all lazy job hoppers?
No, I think that you get these 22 to 24-year-olds that are coming out of college that are excited to make a mark, to prove to someone that they're good enough, to go and go to that product manager who is 40 years old and watch their spec review and say, yeah, just because I'm 22, it doesn't mean that I can't write a better spec review. And they'll stay up all night and they'll come up with this idea and proposal and email it out and be on at all hours. And I think that it's not super sustainable. It is a thing that we see tech companies benefiting from, and I think that that is my view of that. My characterization of that, particularly couple of years, is don't know your limits, work way too hard, be always on, and don't let anyone, or be a little angry that people are trying to bucket you for your age. And I think that then you see the fallout for kind of the few years following that. But it definitely benefits companies to have people like that in there.
Leen, you founded M3, and you were also the youngest person at M3 for a long time, by a lot, right?
Yes, yeah. Now I'm not the youngest, thank God. But
Congratulations.
So, yeah, most of the people that I worked with in the last 3 years were at least double my age, and I think that potentially, I don't know if this is generational, but working with experience is very important, especially, I don't think it's only specific for biotech. Biotechnology, potentially, it's a multidisciplinary. You need a lot of experience in so many areas. But I think what I learned working with different generations is if they, basically your comment about being angry that you're young and people bucket you, I think you should be okay that you're young and people see you as young, because once they see that you realize that you don't have basically the 20, 30 years that they have in their pockets, they will help you, and you could take so much from them. So I think that technology, you guys are lucky that you could hire 22 to 24. We don't have that luxury in biotech. That's why it's also a more efficient and lean industries, I would say, compared to biotech. But there are leaders that are moving in biotech that are younger than I am, or millennials. The biggest IPO ever in biotech happened last year, last year, and it was with a CEO that's trying to also working in a technology parallel to our technology therapies for Alzheimer's, and it was the biggest IPO ever in biotech. And he's 29. He was 29. So it's there's hope for biotech as well.
Yeah, I had somebody once tell me like, don't be upset that you look younger than you are. You have the potential to just constantly exceed people's expectations.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. They don't know that they have an impression about you, and then you surprise them, which it's nice to basically. And it makes people uncomfortable when they realize that they basically had a pre-impression about you, and they even try to help you more. So accept and embrace your age.
And to your point, I want to add on something that's probably useful for folks in the room that work with millennials. You mentioned that you should have sort of respect for these people that have been doing this for a lot longer and know how to do this thing better, and not be angry about it, but really like embrace it. And I think that one of the primary drivers for our generation of why we work at companies that we do is because we want to gain something from that, and we want to continue our education there and to absorb as much as we can. So I think kind of demonstrating like, hey, there's value for you here to learn from those of us who have been doing this for a while. It seems like that's the best way to establish that relationship, because then someone comes in and they're both ambitious but also teachable, because you have the very thing that they want, and that's insight into the thing that they want to do with their future.
And I don't think mentors want you to follow them exactly, but it's basically listening to them and then make your own decisions with a fresh look. And I think that's why a lot of the older generation like to work with millennials who are ambitious and want to change the world, is because you don't take everything for granted. You don't take their experiences as something that you have to follow. We're not heavily influenced by failures and successes, because we want to open our own paths. I'm talking about this group, but potentially it could be for the full millennial generation.
Yeah, Richard, do you have any advice for people who might be working with or hiring millennials?
My advice would be just, I think with this shared economy, the proliferation of technology platforms, young people have so many different choices and options. And I think it's just make sure, this is more from a people development standpoint, HR standpoint, that make sure the work are meaningful. And I think, give them a really clear path to their development plan, and really it's an exchange of value, I would say. The company provides the experiences, and the employee really just providing their time in executing what they wanted to be done. I think a lot of times our leadership team, we talk about it's really in a way you are just leasing their time. You are sharing. They are just leasing their time to you, right? While they are here, how do you make the most win-win situation for both parties? I think to me that's really important. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about wearables for a minute. Have you guys all seen the new Snapchat sunglasses?
Yeah.
Spectacles?
Yeah, the spectacles. If not, take a look. What do you think? Would you wear these? They're also down here.
In a certain situation. I mean, as like a gag,
What
right?
situation?
It's you're like hanging out on a Saturday during the summer at Gasworks at a barbecue or something. I'm not gonna sport these into the office just yet.
I would wear them, I think. I think they're kind of cool.
Yeah, I think I'll wear the version 10. That's a little bit more refined.
Sure. I asked because I was so against Google Glass when it came out. I just thought it was so dorky. But they kind of speak to me, and I don't know if it's just because they're a little more subtle or what it is, but is there something that makes a wearable cool and uncool?
Well, to me, there's a few things going on here. One, I think you're seeing LA versus San Francisco, and I think that
Snapchat is based in LA, for anybody who doesn't know.
Yeah, I mean they're right there on the Santa Monica Pier or boardwalk, and you get, the whole attitude of that company is very unapologetic, in your face. It's kind of flashy, it's kind of ridiculous, and they totally own that, and they're a cool fashion brand. I mean, if they made a high-end garment like that, this is kind of their foray into that, and I think that's going to be successful for them. Google, on the other hand, aside from the fact that Glass didn't have a specific purpose, it was like this nebulous, you could do anything with Google Glass, you just look so geeky. I mean, they were not owning the, hey, there's a camera on this thing. It was like, how can we put it up in the top right corner? And it was a very early prototypey attempt at something where I didn't think they know the use case yet. And Snapchat has a great idea of the use case and is kind of already cool.
Leen or Richard, what do you think?
I honestly don't know what they do.
What they do?
Yeah,
That's a good
I don't know.
question.
Yeah.
So they have two lenses in the lenses, and you can take 10-second video with them, and then you can add on up to 30 seconds, and it automatically syncs with your Snapchat account.
Okay.
So it's supposed to kind of replicate the experience of taking video as you would see it in real life. They are coming out soon. They're not saying when, and they're releasing a limited number. So lots of, they're intentionally building hype around them.
Yeah, probably I will not wear them. No.
Yeah, I would just echo what she said. I mean, it's a new product, and so wait for the next version when it come out.
Okay.
I think the biggest signal from this is keep an eye on Snapchat. Their ambition is far larger than we thought.
Yeah, and I mean, even if not everybody on stage would wear them as business professionals, do you think that they're going to succeed where Google Glass failed?
Because they're simple and there's one thing that they do and they connected that potentially with the generation that heavily uses Snapchat, I think they have a higher chance of it. They sound simple and they only serve one purpose, Snapchatting what you see exactly. So I think they have a good chance and they look cute. So.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit more about working with millennials and hiring them, because I think that is something that this audience could learn a little bit about. And I'm curious, would you hire somebody on the other end of the spectrum? You guys all work in companies that require a certain knowledge of being on the cutting edge of technology, but would you hire somebody who's 50?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Would you
I
hire
also-
someone who's younger than you?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it all depends on the attitude and if they fit the culture and they will help the goal of the company. So age is not a factor if they're going to help you succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak about Pioneer Square Labs specifically. Once we have a company that we've been developing internally that reaches a point of traction, our whole goal as a business is to get that traction and idea into somebody's hands who has deep domain knowledge in that space and is a proven executor. And for us, that comes with time. So that's absolutely the thing that we're looking for.
Richard, I mean, I know
Yeah.
that almost everybody you work with is pretty young.
Yeah, absolutely. We have, older folks on our leadership team really provides experience and guidance to the younger team members. I think, it's all about the role and what's the expectation out of that. And, with age, it comes with experience and wisdom. And, that's what's really needed. You have to have the balance of the both energy and experience and the wisdom to be able to execute, right? Yeah. And always that, diversity is always good to, when the people who are, creating the product are so different than people who are consuming the product, then you're going to have problems. And so I think with age gaps and diversity, race, you have to have a really diversified team to be able to create world-class products. Yeah.
Now, Ben, I know that you've worked with a lot of startups in your various experiences with Madrona, at Microsoft Garage. And so from that experience, what emerging technologies do you think have the potential to really change your life or all of our lives?
I think we'll probably all hear over the next few days VR, AR, mixed reality, self-driving cars, a lot of these things. I think one of the things that's going to characterize the next 20 to 50 years is thinking ahead of where the current technology is to what are the societal implications of those things. Because I think VR is going to get good enough, and the product's going to get polished enough, and the experiences are going to get addicting enough that it's going to be more like drugs than games. And I think that we have to really figure out, how do we as a society deal with that? Because the price is going to come down to almost nothing at some point, and it's going to be super widely available. And for a lot of people, it's going to feel better than the real world. So for those, Star Trek: The Next Generation fans out there, it's a whole episode about this. But I think we have to really be careful and think about, as we get better and better at creating these non-real life experiences or change our definition of what's real life, how do we think through the implications of those things?
do you think we are going to be careful? This stuff moves at such a fast pace. Are we going to be able to catch up and say, like, this isn't right, or we need to put a regulation here?
Probably after the fact, and then we'll have some conflict over that.
Richard, anything that you're excited about or most excited about?
I think just echo to what he said there. The AR/VR technology, the Internet of Things, the speed of the Internet, and smart, wearables and smart technologies. That's going to really make the world more and more connected. With this digital transformation of our economy in this third industrial revolution of AR/VR, data science, biotech. I can't really fathom what the next 10 to 20 years looks like, and we're just really excited to see how technology is going to transform the entire economy. I mean, again, right, there's no company that's not a tech company. Everything's tech-enabled, built on the base of software and hardware. So I think it's just a really exciting time that we're in. Yeah.
Leen, maybe you can offer a different perspective coming from the biotech space.
Yeah, I think what I'm excited about, I can't use all the fancy words that they use, but what I like is that there's actually an overlap between the two industries, biotech and tech, and there's a realization that we got to a place with life sciences and biotechnology where we're stagnant, and we're trying to catch up with technology. And I think that all the informatics and the analytical tools, virtual reality it's going to decrease a lot of the expenses that is required for training and a lot. I think that from our side, realizing that we need to basically partner with technology to get to the next stage, and also the realization from the high-tech industry that the opportunity is in life sciences. There's a lot of collaborations and partnerships. Even wearable devices right now is directed toward health and basically wellness. So that's, I think, that what excites me is our industry is being empowered with the high-tech industry, and even the smallest tool, even those wearable devices, we are taking advantage in clinical trials. We're using applications in clinical trials. We're using basically devices in clinical trials, in our testing, with animal testing, with drug development. So this is really exciting because working with the older generation in the company, it's just fascinating when you see their reaction when they see something that you could do in way shorter period of time, because the empowerment that we got from high-tech industry. So yeah, it's very exciting.
And piggybacking on top of that, I think in that 20 to 50 year range, humans are going to start being augmented in a way that we are going to have blurry lines around like what's a person and what's a technology-enabled person. And I think right now we're kidding ourselves when we say we're not sort of already on the path with how much we need to have our phones next to us all the time. That feeling of like feeling naked when your phone's not there. I don't think that just because it's not embedded in us yet, that means that we should be celebrating the fact that we're not cyborgs. Like we're gonna get there, and whether it's through like what CRISPR is doing with the ability to inexpensively modify our DNA, which I'm already at the limit of where I should be talking about this based on my knowledge, but
we won't tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, they're using reprogramming your DNA, so we're using the same concepts that you guys use in coding and programming to basically modify and optimize our DNA, our information that we have in our cells. But yeah.
It's crazy. I just think like the man and machine are coming together a lot faster than we think.
And I think me being here today is a clear indication that the two industries are overlapping, and that this is cool. So. Mm-hmm.
So I have one more question for you guys before I want to open up for a little audience Q&A. So if any of you guys out there have questions for our panelists, think about them now and then raise your hand, and John will come over with a microphone. But one thing that I think really differentiates us, and Ben, you talked about this a little bit with me previously, is status. What defines status for previous generations and what does for us. So do you guys think that we consider status symbols differently than previous generations? Ben, do you want to start us out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, caveating all of this with there's a spectrum, and some people are going to fall more on the, boomer side of status. But what used to be super important in terms of the big house in the suburbs, the 3-car garage, the fancy car, There's obviously gonna be a lot of that for a long time, but in a generation that's much more urban, much more mobile, digital status is the sort of a thing, looking at like followers and likes and things like that. We see very different status symbols kind of emerging with this generation than we have in previous generations. And we're talking a lot about millennials, but thinking even kind of further down the line, the way that teenagers use Snapchat and Instagram, if any, I'm sure people have like kids or little brothers or nieces or nephews, watching them use these apps is insane. It's like a whole different visual grammar, and like every photo you put it up and immediately gets 200 likes because everyone in your school has to go and like it immediately, otherwise there's drama. It's crazy looking at how status has shifted and how that doesn't just stay in the high school, but like digital status kind of means something as you go through your 20s and 30s too.
So do you guys think that maybe somebody a little bit younger than us would rather have, say, 1,000 Instagram followers than a car?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's my fault for bringing it up, but it's hard to make the direct comparison because one sort of has utility and one has maybe utility. But people care about this digital representation of status in a way they haven't before.
And also, I just want to piggyback on what Ben said. I think a lot of younger people wanted to rent and live in the downtown neighborhoods. But the key is that if you look at our socioeconomic situation right now, we have such wide income inequality gap. It's not that people don't want to live in houses; it's people can't afford it. Look at Seattle, look at San Francisco. If you look at a Gini coefficient, San Francisco has the same, I think, income inequality with Nigeria or something like that. We recently did a study, and so. Affordability is key, and then looking at this different socioeconomic trends, how it influences people to do what behavior, that's really important as well. Yeah.
And I think that because the world is so open right now and we have this connectivity, it's harder to commit to one place. So buying a house means that you're going to stay here for the next 20 years. So still millennials, we still think that we want to live in different areas, we want to get different experiences because we are exposed. You read about things and you want to actually go and experience it. So I think that's another factor why we're not really connected to more, I would say, physical stuff. Like a house, it doesn't have the same meaning as it used to have previously. It's not the millennial dream to have a house and a family when you're 30.
What is the millennial dream?
I think it's having a more worldly experience, at least from my circle, more worldly experience, be more connected. It's keeping up with the technology, having an interesting and challenging life. And I might be just talking about a smaller subgroup of the millennials, but even the groups that are willing to basically commit to a company for 5 years when they get a new job, they're still, they plan trips at a very young age. So previously, older generation, they keep when we retire, we'll go around the world. Millennials do things right away, so we actually travel. Even me having a super busy schedule, I always try to expand and learn because I either get it from the internet, from the screen, or actually go and try it.
We're also like pretty non-committal. So the other side of that coin is like we don't want the nice car because it depreciates very quickly and it's a liability and it ties us down. And the idea of like having just as much stuff as you need, but not enough to like tie you to one place or one lifestyle. Or I think that there's a funny term, FOMO, fear of missing out, that permeates millennials in a big way. And if there's an opportunity to go do something else and learn something else and be around a different group of people, you want to make sure that you're not doing something that hamstrings you away from being able to do those things.
Great. Well, I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. Does anybody have any? No? No questions? All right. Last chance. Oh. Yeah, I hear the term experiences over stuff a lot to define us.
Yeah.
Hello. So I have an interesting question. I'm in the last quartile of Gen X. So you guys, I noticed, didn't mention my generation much, which is all right because it was really small. No, that's all right. It's all right. It's all about the boomers and the millennials. So I'm a parent. See what I did? The Gen Xers heard that. I'm a parent of young children. And my generation is interesting, especially in the Seattle area, because there's a bunch of parents here that obviously work for very large technology companies. And I find that my generation is quite generally restrictive about how their children access technology. These people who built their careers on access to technology don't let their children have access to technology because they fear how screen time will affect them. They fear how it will change the way they learn, because it isn't the way my generation learned. Because we grew up as the technology was coming of age. So I'm curious, none of you have children yet, but I'm curious how you think about maybe having children one day, or how you think others should treat their children relative to technology, given your youth and how you grew up with technology all the time. I'm fascinated.
So I could answer that from a scientific and biological point of view. It depends on the age, so there has been a negative correlation between screen time, especially what they're watching, and the development of the brain. So I think you're doing the right thing, doing some restriction, and also what they're watching also, or using the technology for. Also socially, this is very early stage, and then when you start to send your kids to school or KG, there has been also social changes based on the use of technology. So that the less technological exposure, or the more controlled technological exposure, especially screen time they call it, is better than just giving them, and for them to just have one friend, which is the phone or the tablet. So there is proof in scientific correlation that you should have some control, so you're not doing the wrong thing. Versus after age, they did a study at age 16 and after, where they basically saw the effect of games, and I don't know what type of games, it could be just like car racing, but there has been a positive correlation between brain connections and increased attention with gaming. And this is why I know, because my brother is a MD and he plays, do all this crazy online things, and we always tell him that you should stop, and he gives us all these scientific publications that it's actually good for your brain to, but it all depends on the age, and there's social cues, and there's also brain development that is involved, especially at very early stage.
Do either of you guys want to tackle it?
I think that's the most scientific answer you can get.
I'll just give it's understandably tough, because the kids are going to feel like, well, mom and dad, or parents are on the computers all the time. The parents are not limiting screen time. So I could understandably see that it'd be tough as a parent to, not deprive yourself of looking at screens as often as we do, and yet trying to set the example and be fair with the kids in the household. Talking about struggles coming up now and in the next few decades, that's definitely one of them.
Yeah, that's I think a very important. I can't get. I'm already started to because I want to check my email. So it's I think it's gonna be hard to set to become an example for children. But yeah, I think you should do what you're doing.
Well, you can check your email now, because we are out of time. Thank you, Richard, Ben, and Leen, for sharing the millennial perspective with all of us.
And Ben.
Thanks.
Thanks. Come on.